Hello, everybody. I'm Susanne. I'm from the Stanford Edible Garden Trail, which is a community initiative that we started this year in May. It's a little idea we had to share information. Oh, good, everyone's coming on the screen now. I'm not talking to a blank screen. We had this idea to share information among local growers to encourage more people to grow food in their own backyards. And so we started this up in May, and what we do is we go around and we film different gardens in our local area, and actually we're going now right across Southeast Queensland, and we post these up on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, and the whole purpose is just to share information. So if this sounds like something you might be interested in, just look up Stanford Edible Garden Trail and you will find us. So that is it from me. I would like to welcome all of the people on our panel and invite each of you to give a short introduction. So this is, of course, all about edible gardens, and edible oasis is the topic of this session. So let's start with Annemarie from the Food Forest Home Extension. Annemarie, would you like to give us a bit of an introduction?
Sure. Hi, we're Graham and Annemarie Brookman, and we own and run the Food Forest, which is a certified peri-urban farm and a permaculture living centre. We're near Gawler, which is about 50 kilometres north of Adelaide. We've been demonstrating the practical results of well-designed, low-input homes, gardens, orchards, water systems and energy capture for about 25 years. The Food Forest attracts thousands of visitors each year, well, you know, before COVID, including many school and uni students, and we also mentor young urban food producers. We are actively involved in restoring the local ecosystem along the Gawler River, caring for aquifers, which are critical to the future of food production based on underground water, and striving for environmentally sensible planning decisions through local and state governments. In short, we're passionate about creating a livable home and a sustainable business. We're passionate about the environment, community, food, and urban resilience. Our passive solar extension to our heritage 180-year-old cottage was built in 2000, and we had a limited budget, but we were keen to include straw bale stone and insulated galvanised iron walls. We engaged the South Australian straw bale builder Lance Curl as our builder, but I was very involved, hands-on in the day-to-day running of the project. We've lived with the extension for 20 years and we are incredibly happy with it, and we hope we can answer your questions during this session. That's it.
Thank you, Annemarie. Your photos look very inspiring. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions both about your house and your garden.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's go to John. John's from Sustainable Horticulture, and I know, John, you're in Southeast Queensland.
Yeah, g'day, Susan. Yeah, good to see your face again. We've caught up before. My name's John. I'm from Sustainable Horticulture in Brisbane. I'm currently sitting in a car, unfortunately, so forgive me for that. But we have pivoted to this virtual online world. I run a small urban farm on 730 square metres. I've got a Bachelor of Science in Horticulture, and also work for the Queensland Farmers Federation on energy efficiency program throughout the state. We look at various fuel sources. My place, basically I try and integrate ecosystems and edible food systems with aquaponics, hydroponics, conventionally and organically, along with beekeeping and various other things to try and encourage flora and fauna to come back to the suburbs. It's been a bit of a lengthy process, probably over, I'd say, 5 or 6 years it's taken me to work on this property, but it's pretty much at the stage where most of my fruit and vegetables can be supplied. I have a small chicken run, so I have chickens as well, and yeah, that's probably about the crux of my place.
Thank you, John. I've had the privilege of going to John's place. We actually visited John as part of the trail, so I can certainly vouch for an amazing backyard. So let's scoot over to Penny. Penny, you're in Darwin, I believe. Oh, are you on? I'm not sure whether you're on the call, Jenny, but we're seeing your photo, or a photo of the Multipit Community Garden.
Hi.
Oh, hello. Looks like Leah.
Hi. My name's Leah Gill.
Hello.
Hi. So you just introduced.
Yeah, so would you like to just introduce the Mulch Pit Garden?
Yeah, sure. I belong to the Mulch Pit Community Garden, which is situated behind the Nightcliff Uniting Church in Rapper Creek, which is a suburb of Darwin in the Northern Territory. The garden started out as a horrible, hard car park, and we had a permaculture course run by Rosemary Morrow, and out of that course 3 community gardens in Darwin started. We were very concerned up here with the distance our food comes from. Most of the food that's sold in Darwin comes from the southern states. So we thought that we needed to change people's perspective over what can be grown and what can be grown all year. Up here there's an issue with growing the food. A lot of the foods that we're familiar with can only be grown during what we call our dry season, which runs from about March through to now. It's starting to get hot and horrible now, but we want to change that perspective and show that food can be grown all year up here. The Mulch Pit is a wonderful community. It's not just the garden, there's an op shop attached, and also we have a fair trade cafe which operates on Saturday morning. So it's a real destination now. A lot of people have meetings and all sorts of things happening there, workshops. We have a regular cooking night where we use highlight at least one ingredient from the garden, so that people who are not used to eating perhaps some of the things that we find very easy to grow can learn how to use it in their cooking. That there's quite a bit of an issue with things growing really well, but people not understanding how to use them because the produce is unfamiliar. We have children's workshops when things are normal, and also garden-based craft. Saturday mornings is very busy. We have lots of people turning up. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Leah. It sounds like an amazing place. I'd love to visit. So let's go to our 4th panelist, Rodney from Treehouse in North Narrabeen.
Oh, great, thanks. So,
Rodney.
hi, how are you? I wasn't sure which pictures you were going to put up, so it was a little bit hard to know what I was going to talk about. So we bought the block in 2003, and it was an old block, 1,200 square meters. So a lot of work on there, and it just had a tiny little house at the top, which if you look at some of the other photos, you'll see how tiny it was. And it was just full of weeds. And I didn't really know too much about horticulture. Luckily though, my wife is a landscape architect, so she taught me a little bit, and I've taken over since. So much to her dissatisfaction from that. In the early years, we didn't really know too much about. It was difficult with the garden. It was a lot of trial and error, not knowing exactly how natives would grow in some areas, and then also with the edible foods. Just again, trial and error, just working out what was going to work in different places. We do have a lot of trees on the north side, so that does present some challenges. But then it was only once we'd actually built the house that I realized just how good the soil was on the land. When we were actually building the house, I discovered we were on an old creek bed, because on one side of the block we only had to peer down to 1.5 meters. Yet on the other side of the block we had to go down 6 meters, which was all really, really high quality soil. So pretty much whatever we plant in the garden now seems to just grow really, really easily. And so we've got a few planted beds around the garden. I'm going to say a few. We've got probably a dozen now. And then we've also got a chicken run. So we've got a half dozen chickens, which are great for the fertilizer. So we just chuck that in the compost and then work it through the rest of the garden after that, just so it doesn't damage the plants. Gives the manure a little bit of time just to degrade. And then once we'd finished the house, because I didn't want to keep running all the way down to the garden, I made several little planter boxes up and around the kitchen where we live, which just makes it easier to
Right, I think we just lost your sound. You've just, I think when you moved that, you unmuted. You're back. There we go.
Sorry about that. So yeah, so having the herbs and the veggies there right next to where we cook is great. Otherwise, you've got to run 2 minutes down to the bottom of the garden, which is
Yes. No.
and that's us. So yeah.
Thank you for that introduction. Wonderful. Okay, we've got a great variety of properties here, and not a huge amount of time, but hopefully we will have a chance to get lots of information shared. So if you're watching this, there is a Q&A button. There is a chat button, but please don't put your questions in the chat. The chat is for sharing information with each other. But if you have a question for us, please put it in the Q&A button, and I will have a look for that and ask your question to the panelists as we go along. I thought, why don't we start? There are so many people who have been the last few months and probably really influenced from COVID, thinking about starting gardens or have started a garden. So I thought, why don't we just start with thinking way back to when you first started your garden. Perhaps you could share some information about what went on for you. Like, what information did you need to get going? Did you get a design done? I know Leah mentioned that you had the Permaculture course, and but perhaps Annemarie, we could start with you. Did it start from a design, or where did take it away? Oh, can't hear you either. You need to unmute yourself. There should be a button there to click unmute. Oh, there you go.
Hello? The question, what did we do?
Yeah.
We went to permaculture. I mean, we've got a beautiful planning system that's, made in Australia. And so you've got a sequence of really sensible things to do. Put yourself in the position of being a customer and give your brief to the designer. And so we need to know what the intentions are, what the capability of the land is. And in permaculture design, you'd sort of have to look at your sector analysis, so where your sun's coming from, zoning. So where's this garden going to be? Is it going to be sort of remote from the house or close by? All of these little urban oases need to be lovely places, and if they can be on a highly trafficked route where you're going to go through, multiple times per day. Ours is, our little food forest is between the house and the chook shed, and so it's a place that we go past very regularly. I guess you need to know whether you're going to welcome any animals into the garden, and so the placement of the garden needs to sort of respect, the chooks or guinea pigs or whatever you're going to have. And then there's a matter of things like, are you going to alter the landform, which could, involve retaining walls and so forth, and do you have to cut down wind, so put in artificial windbreaks or artificial shade and those sorts of things. So it all sounds pretty cold-hearted, but that's certainly the way we did it, and it worked fantastically well if you had that nice sequential kind of planning system in place.
Okay, and when did you start your garden?
Oh, we're going back a very, very long time, about 40 years.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. Okay, so thank you. John, could you talk us through what the process was with you? Did you start with a design, or did you just start with one plant in the ground?
It was more just one plant in the ground, Susan. There was some design factor there, and I've slowly learned a little bit more about design as time goes by. A lot of it was also observation, so observing the landscape, looking at areas on the property that potentially are waterlogging, areas that mightn't grow different types of food, shade areas. So there is a fair bit of observation involved in planning out a landscape, I guess, and knowing what trees to use and the sun angle is important. So deciduous trees are very good for allowing sunlight through when they're deciduous. So different sun angles, you could use those trees to effectively shade understory plants during summer, during the vegetative growth stage. So it's a bit of observation, design, and a learned process as you go.
Okay, so so John, both John and Annemarie, did either of you, it sounded like Annemarie and Graham, that you sought some help from outside with your design process. Is that right?
Both. We had both done permaculture design courses.
Yeah.
We'd also made sure that we visited lots and lots of gardens beforehand, and so yeah, we have bi-regional groups in South Australia, and if you volunteer on one person's place, then you can usually get their help back and those sorts of, so we just sort of approached it steadily and then built a master plan.
Okay, well, it sounds like both you and also John, you've had a similar sort of approach in that it looks like you've really tried to upskill your own knowledge as you've gone along. Would that be correct? Yeah, okay. Yep. So Rod, I'd love to hear from you because where did the garden come in with your place? Was it always intended that you would have a garden there, or the main focus originally was your house and the renovation or the build of your house?
Oh no, originally it was the house was a long way away. It was a dream really, the house when we started here, because we bought in 2003, and we only built the house in 2012, and we didn't have any money prior to that to build. So we concentrated on the garden because it was, it doesn't cost a lot of money to garden. It's just your own time, and so pretty much every weekend, me and my wife would, chip out a little bit of the block, and with it being 1,200 square meters, it's just never ending. Even now, it's still have to do probably, there's at least a dozen days a year just to keep on top of it, and then there are little bits on top of that as well. And I think one of the ways that we went about it was just from watching. I noticed Costa's name is in the webinar chat there. We just watched the Garden Australia.
Yeah.
Every single weekend, it was like, we garden and then sit down and watch that and just learn more and more. So
that's a really good strategy. Yeah, I did see your name pop up, Costa. Hello, thanks for joining us. And that's the amazing thing, right, with gardening, you can never get enough. So even Costa, here he is, can't get enough. So I'll go to a few questions in a moment, so please post your questions up. But I had a question I wanted to ask, is a question that gets asked a lot when we're visiting gardens is people say to us, look, how realistic is it to get even close to being self-sustainable in your own backyard? And actually, is that even a goal? So I wondered if any of you could comment about that.
I'd like to chime in, Susan, on water. Water's one of those things that fruit crops definitely love. So it is a bit of an issue. Without a larger property, water storage can be an issue, and factoring in that water storage. So in town, it's great, you have a reliable water source, but outside of those areas, you really have to focus on the water. So it can be hard to be truly self-sustainable on a smaller block, but you can go as close as you can, and by reducing your footprint as much as you can.
Okay, thank you. Leah, how much food do you produce in your community garden? Is it a focus getting a lot of food, or, I mean, you're obviously getting benefits of community building and courses that you're running there. How much food actually comes out of it?
Well, to be honest, probably not a lot at this time of year, but enough to have a meal every once in a while when there's a lot of things that are there all year round that we can use, a lot of greens, some root vegetables. We have chooks, and we have an amazing plant called a jackfruit, which produces huge fruit, which is very great to utilise when we're not in COVID and can have our cooking nights. We have moringa trees, which produce food all year round. So there's several things that can be used all year round, but yeah, it would be very hard to be totally sustainable.
Annemarie and Graham, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's actually really important to start small. I mean, we've been here for a long time, but the food forest didn't sort of happen overnight. It's part of a plan. And I think in terms of what you want to grow yourself and what you can grow yourself can be a big learning curve. And I think the most important thing is to start small with the things that you know you like and your family will eat. That's another really big thing. And as you build up skills and confidence and motivation, and finding out if that's really what you want to do, rather than the pressure of having to be sustainable, work out, how much time you can dedicate. And I think John mentioned water, massively important. We're in South Australia. Water is a huge issue. And so take it from there, step by step. So a plan, and talking to lots of people, and talk to like-minded people, which is the other thing, who support rather than judge.
But I guess the other thing is that absolute self-sufficiency is really a questionable commodity. Some people are on particular soil that grows really good carrots, and other people are on soil that grows fantastic pistachio nuts. But humans have been trading since they evolved, and I believe that the business of farmers markets is really important, so that you can actually do some things very, very well, and you can create a wonderful sort of local regional cuisine with sort of systems.
Yeah, I've heard the expression of community sufficiency as being a better aim than this idea of sufficiency in your backyard, which would be incredibly difficult to meet. And also the idea of it being community, obviously we get so many other benefits that come with it then. So I'd love to go to some of the questions coming in. We have a question, since we're talking about how we've all how you've all upskilled. There's a question from Stephanie asking, what's the best resource, guide, Holy Bible to get information on gardening? Now, we've had two mentioned already. We had watching Gardening Australia. We also had, you mentioned you mentioned that you did a permaculture course, like Leah mentioned, that's where it all started up in Darwin, and also Annemarie and Graham. Would any of you have something, Rod or John, that you'd like to add, something that would be really good? Perhaps it might even be a website or something like that that's been really useful for you. Yeah, well, Rod, yes, go ahead.
Whenever I have a problem, whether it's insects or pests or anything like that, I just tend to go to Google and just not necessarily take the first one that you see, but have a look and see what's there. And if there's an organic way of doing it, or that doesn't involve chemicals, then you try that first of all. So, and you normally will find something that will help you.
Yes, I personally have enjoyed YouTube. Find a lot of good things on YouTube. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Oh no, not really. No, just
Okay.
Just research on the internet, and trial and error again, really. So
I can see somebody popped. Well, I think that might have been in the chat, so it's disappeared off my screen. Lewis, somebody or other, complete book of something. That would be in the chat if it's there, which I can't see at the moment. Okay, so we've got a question from River, who is asking, what are some of the biggest challenges with urban gardening? You're all urban, really. So is anybody, what are some particular challenges that, I know John, you've mentioned water. Is there anybody, what's that, John?
Bush turkeys.
Yeah, I was going to say animals. That was going to be my thing. That's the South East Queensland challenge, right?
Interestingly though, Susan, with bush turkeys, they do serve a purpose. So they will compost for you. So
yes.
at the moment, I've got a bush turkey that's there's 4 of them breeding in the front yard, but they have made a mess of the garden. But I learned to do with it, and what I'll do there is I'll plant in green manures after they've finished breeding, and then pull their compost back over. So effectively, it's enriching the soil. So they do go, even though there's issues, there's resolves.
Yeah, great. Anybody else? I can see the chat popping up and then it disappears, but it's great. Everybody's sharing lots of resources. And I'm glad somebody just shared Garden H. I was trying to think of it before. That's a really useful website to go where you can put in your area and it gives you suggestions of what to plant now. So keep sharing amongst each other.
Yeah, you can talk.
If you just pop your hand up, yep, I can see you. Hi, Leah, go ahead. What are some of the challenges you face up there?
We have something called bush chooks here, which I assume are probably just a bit smaller than the bush turkey. And they are destructive little so-and-sos. And we have to come up with all sorts of ways to dissuade them. I found recently that in our small garden surrounding our cafe, I got lazy one weekend and threw coffee grounds around, and it seems that they're not keen on those. So that might be something that people might like to try. We have a lot of trouble often too with damage to garden and infrastructure. We have a lot of people visiting the gardens, so sometimes kids get a bit unruly and damage things. Theft of plants is a big one. But yeah, generally it's the biggest problem we have is the soil quality here. It's alluvial, so it's really not great for growing anything in. So everything has to be built up rather than dug down.
Okay, so you've got raised beds everywhere, have you, throughout your garden?
Yes. It's the only way it works here.
Okay, great. So I wanted to ask a question actually about, it's back to a little bit about that supply and one of the challenges of the backyard gardener where there's either sort of nothing or there's a glut of food, and wondered if any of you have experimented with preserving or otherwise storing food that you're growing. Yes, Annemarie.
Preserving. Drying is fantastic. If you hot, dry weather, you utilize the sun. If it's cold, wet and miserable, there are fantastic electric dryers available, and they come in all shapes and sizes. And once it's dried, it's stable, so you don't rely on electricity or for freezing or whatever to keep it preserved. Fermenting, of course, juicing and fermenting. So making your own wine, your own vinegar is fantastic. And freezers are good if you have a reliable electricity supply, because that's just a really broad range of methods that we have around our house and pantry. And even on the commercial scale, food that's not good enough to go to the farmer's market and is graded out, we can preserve through freezing or drying or fermenting.
Yeah, two other bits. I love fermentation. It makes life really enjoyable because you can do your own wines from fruits and barley or whatever it might be, and you can also create really stable products and reuse glass containers that have tragically become empty, and so it's part of a wonderful cycle. The other thing Annemarie didn't mention particularly with the dried fruit and vegetables is storage, and it's critical that you keep those beautiful, it's a lot of hard work in dried fruit, so containers that are basically airtight are required, and plastic is absolutely hopeless because oxygen will migrate through thinner plastic vessels, and so you'll end up with something that hasn't been attacked by an insect, but it's actually completely oxidized and tastes bloody awful. So that's really good.
Thank you for that tip. Very disappointing after all that effort if you find you open the container and it's not much good. Unless anybody wanted to comment there, I can see there are quite a few questions all to do with pests. So I'm going to just call a few out and let's see if we can tackle those. Yeah, Liz is saying that pests are the biggest problem each year, different pests. Okay, there's a few questions here. One from Vinny about possums, how to discourage possums from eating vegetables, including rhubarb, which it should be poisonous. There's also about how to deter cockatoos from the garden from Robin. So another one from Anne about possums. So we've got two on possums, one on cockatoo, and then we might go into a seed saving question. So has anybody got an experience with cockatoos or possums? Oh yeah, great, Leah. Oh, you unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
We have possums living in our garden. They don't take much, but we have had things eating the jackfruit, which I assume is either them or rats. The people who live as caretakers at the church came up with a great cage system where they cage the jackfruit.
Okay.
We can also do that with bananas. And another thing I've seen is a plastic, like a tube cut to fit around a tree so that the possums can't climb it. Haven't tried that myself, but I've heard reliably that it works well. Or greasing the trunk of your tree, which is a bit radical, but apparently works. As for cockies, I think forget it. They're just, there's not much chance to stopping the little buggers, because whatever you put on what they like, they're just going to rip to pieces anyway. Yeah.
Rod, and what about you in Narrabeen? Do you have any problems with possums or cockatoos or other pests?
We have so many possums around here, and I've never had a problem with them eating any of the vegetables. Occasionally they will go for the parsley, I think, but the rest of the garden, no, they don't seem to. I'm not sure why they attack some and they don't attack others. The only reason I could probably see for that is that maybe everybody around where we are has got quite large gardens, so everybody's 1,200 square meter blocks, so the possums have got so much space to eat anything other than your veggies, and that may be the reason why. But if I was more urban and I wanted to grow, I think the only way that you can stop them is just to make a cage, and stop them getting in there. And probably the guy at the bottom of here has probably got one of the best chicken houses I've seen, and he just made it with the tennis courts mesh, which work quite well, and that's a cheap and easy way to do it, and just to build something that you can completely stop them getting in. Yeah,
and I think you've hit the nail on the head with the possums. I've drawn the same conclusion. My friends that live in suburban parts of Brisbane have a lot of problems with possums, and out here we don't really have any problem because I think there's so much for them to eat. But then we get other things. I get plenty of other pests. So I think everybody has their own challenge, don't they? We've got a few minutes left. Somebody was saying something. Go ahead.
I was going to say probably one of the things that we do get on the citrus plants quite a lot is we get stink bugs on there.
Yes.
The best way no matter how many times you flick them off, they just will not go away. And one of the best ways I found to get rid of those was just a plastic bottle, and you cut the top off, a bit of water in the bottom, and then stick the bottle back in, and the stink bed bugs, and then put it at the base of the plant, and then the stink bugs will just go in through the bottle, and then they can't get back out again. And that's that was from looking on Google, and that was
right.
Google
and it worked.
It may be, so yes.
Oh, it's a good tip because they're out at the moment. I know. So we've got probably time. I think we got started a little bit late though, but we've certainly got time for another question, maybe a couple more. There was a question there about any tips on seed saving. I'm wondering if any of you are doing that in your gardens.
I do a little bit, Suzanne, and the main way that I try and save my seed is with a temperature controlled fridge. So keeping your seeds stored at the correct temperature is often a requirement. You can use an old fridge and put on a new thermostat there. So there's ways you can recycle an old fridge that someone might throw out and potentially use that for a seed saving device.
Okay. And John, what do you put them in? Do you have a system? How do you store your individual seeds inside the fridge?
Look, I'm pretty lazy sometimes. I like to keep it pretty minimal, so they tend to just go into packets, and if they come to fruition next season, then all good. But if they don't, then I'll plant something else. So.
Okay, yeah. I've seen people using envelopes, and I've seen beautiful ones where people make their own envelopes, but all depends on your time, right? So Leah, I think were you about to say something earlier? Are you still muted? So just, yeah, now you go, off you go.
I was just going to basically say the same thing. Up here especially, you can't just keep your seeds in the cupboard. I've had a lot of people that have told me that they've saved these wonderful seeds and they've had them in the shed or they've had them in the cupboard. You can't. You've got to stick them in the fridge here, and it's got to be in an airtight container in the fridge. At the moment, I've got the seeds for 2 community gardens. So my fridge is a bit chocker and there's not much room for stuff for my family, but you get that.
Yes.
But yeah, also the seed has to be totally dried out. With beans, especially if you can put a hole in them or a dent with your tooth, they're still too soft. Yeah, it's very disappointing if you've got something very special and put it in the fridge and then come back and it's mouldy. It's not great. Yeah.
And how do you dry yours, Leah? Are you just letting them air dry, or you?
I usually air dry. I try to make at least 1 or 2 days out in full sun so that they get really dry, and then pack them away in an airtight container in the fridge.
Okay, and well labelled.
Yes.
That's a tip.
I'm not good at knowing what things are, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's what I need.
It is.
I find random packets.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, so we've been given the sign that our time's coming to a close. I just wondered if anybody had any kind of burning thing that they wanted to say. If not, I'll thank all of you very much for being. Oh yes, go ahead, Graham.
I just, this concept of a food forest where you're actually intercepting just as much light as you possibly can. So you've got these layers of plants and the high canopy and the low canopy, the climbers, the root crops, so that if you're going to put that irrigation water on, you're going to absolutely maximise your production, and that does involve understanding, you know, how you can put the different species together. But it's a really, really effective way of harvesting sun and turning it into food.
Thank you. And so if anybody hasn't heard of the concept of food forests, just look up permaculture. That's where you'll find a description and information about that. So I'll say thank you to very much to all of the panelists for joining in and sharing your knowledge. And thank you to all those who have been watching. I'm not sure how many there are, but I think there are quite a few, and for all the questions. So let's keep growing. It's such a wonderful thing to grow vegetables in your own backyard and fruit, and keep encouraging others. So I'll say thank you, and I think we'll just say goodbye.